Hey everyone, welcome back again. This is Melissa Landis, Education Director of Lakewood Waterkeeper. I hope you've been following us through our little adventure through our watershed. I just wanted to pop back on and talk about how we're doing this through our Week of Giving process. So on Tuesday, we started the Week of Giving with a documentary called Inhabitant and Indigenous Perspective. We are out here today to kind of walk you through your watershed, our watershed, to kind of show you the range for which Lake Worth Waterkeeper um, kind of protects and looks over and watches, and what that all includes and entails. And then tomorrow we have two nature journaling outings, one at 10 a.m. here at Grassy Waters, which is where we currently are, and then another one at 4:30 at Bryant Park North by the boat ramp. We'll start there for our evening nature journaling. Also tomorrow, we're partnering up with Jar Zero Waste. We're starting to sell those items at our base camp, which is 111 North M Street in downtown Lake Worth Beach. There's street parking. You can come for small gifts, stocking stuffers, anything for that eco-friendly, conscious person that you might have on your list, or someone who's interested in starting to be a little bit more eco-friendly in their own lives. We have some starter kits for you, and a portion of those sales from Jar Zero Waste goes directly back to Lake Worth Waterkeeper to help um, with our projects and what we're trying to accomplish. So visit us tomorrow from 10 to 5, and one of our board members will be there, Emily, to help those sales along. And then on Saturday, we have an evening hike with Ronaldo Diaz, our waterkeeper, and that is at Riverbend Park starting at 4:30. And then on Sunday, finishing out the week of giving, we have a cleanup at Jules Steinhardt Cove at noon. And then we have our big first annual fundraiser dinner. Tickets are still available for that dinner. You can find those tickets on our website at www.lakeworthwaterkeeper.org or www.lwwk.org. We have spaces left. We have a ton of silent auction items that are really amazing that we have to provide that you can bid on. So things like private surfing lessons, private fishing lessons, artwork. So there's a lot there to bid on and be a part of, and that would finish up our week of giving. So if you're unable to attend any of our events this week, you can always donate online on our website and help us protect where we are currently, our watershed, your watershed. We can't do this work without you. So without further ado, I will turn it over to, actually, we'll start with Alex this time. If she can just kind of show us where she's at on her tour of sampling today. We'll take a look at that. So go ahead, Alex.
Thanks. I am at Osprey Park. Hopefully you can hear me okay. It's kind of windy. Um, so this is a little park in like the northern part of the lagoon, just north of like Northwood area. It's a beautiful little like park. I don't know if you can see there's like the little beach and boat launch here. But what's so cool about this park is, hopefully you can see this, the the natural shorelines. So we have our mangroves here. We've got some like riprap. We have all of the sea grapes here. We have all of this sort of like beach grass. So all of those things, sorry, all of those things are super important to creating these healthy living shorelines that will not only slow down and filter the water as it enters the lagoon, but will also be a really important habitat for organisms that will then continue to remove nutrients from the water once that is in the lagoon. So we talked about how the mangroves and seagrass will suck up nutrients. Obviously, they're plants; they will use them to grow. But organisms like oysters will root down on like the prop roots of the mangroves and in the rocks, And they're really, really important filter feeders. So they can clean gallons of water. I think it's something like 10 or 20 gallons a day. It's crazy. Um, Other organisms like crabs and sponges and all sorts of little marine invertebrates can root down on those hard substrates and will help filter and clean the water. And then they, of course, provide food for larger species. So then you get larger fish coming in, feeding on all those delicious little crabbies and tiny fish. And so then you have the roots or the bases of this entire lagoon estuary ecosystem. And some of the species that we get here that rely on the mangroves are super important commercial and recreational species. So fish like snook, permit, um, I think bonefish, they'll all rely on these food chains, these food webs that are created by these living shorelines. Um, and then again, having that diversity there creates these really strong ecosystems and creates amazing places for the people who live here that want to go snorkeling or want to go paddle boarding. So I'm where I am now is just south of Munyon Cove, which is one of the most incredible, well preserved mangrove and seagrass ecosystems in the lagoon. We do our horseshoe crab tagging out there. And when we're paddling out there, we're literally like paddling through herds of manatees. There are eagle rays, there's sharks. There's so much life out in that area. And it all is because they have these really incredible living shorelines and the water is clean and it creates these really complex food webs that then allow this diversity of life to be there. So it's really incredible. I think people don't know that this stuff is here. Um, but that's all the more reason to get out and explore your watershed and protect it, protect the water quality because that's the basis of everything. Um, so yeah, I think that's it. I'll go before my phone dies. I'll give you a last little view of this beautiful area here. Hopefully you can see that. And hopefully you can hear that. It's not too windy. All right. Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you, Alex. So Osprey Park, where Alex is at, is such a unique little pocket park because it has that little living shoreline project that's on there of red mangroves. And as tiny as that little beach is compared to other parks, I have seen some really cool stuff off that little beach area. And it's all because everything works well together, or should be working well together. And including where we're at right now, we're at a really special place in a watershed called Grassy Waters Preserve. And it is, similar to the STAs that we were at before, the stormwater treatment areas. Those were human-made wetlands meant to clean water. Well, Grassy Waters is a natural remnant wetland. This is what a lot of our area looked like. And it's a preserve because it's a nice big section of remnant wetlands that is thankfully protected. And it plays a really critical role for our watershed. So we were following along the C51, and in the previous video, I pointed out that by 441 and Southern Boulevard, we have that one spillway, the S155A by that Lowe's, and that is the dividing line, the hard division between the eastern part of the watershed and the western part. Well, as we go from Lake Okeechobee downstream, before we get to that structure, there's actually a bit of a diversion that's really significant and important for people to understand. There's a canal called the M Canal, and that canal comes out of the C51 about where Loxahatchee is, and then it goes north a little bit before it takes a hard right turn and goes due east. So the M Canal is running parallel with the C51. And what's important to know about the M Canal is that it goes through the Grassy Waters Preserve. So in this direction is south. And so beyond that cypress trees, there's actually that canal that cuts across Grassy Waters Preserve. And we talked about how throughout the watershed, as the water goes down, it's collecting pollution from all these different sources, right? From starting right from Lake Okeechobee, there's all that legacy pollution, and then going through the EAA as those canals irrigate the sugar farms. The sugar farms then drain their fields back into the canal. That adds a really significant amount of pollution in terms of fertilizers, nutrient pollution, and things like herbicides and chemicals and pesticides that they use to protect their fields. And then as that water eventually reaches the C51, remember to recap, the last spot we were at was one of the many structures that can send that water actually south to the southern Everglades, which is what we want. We want to clean that water and we want to send it south. But then some of that water goes east, and when that lake water isn't going east, what the M Canal and the C51 Canal are doing, 90% of the time is what we call local basin runoff. So they're actually draining the community. They're making sure that the communities like Wellington and Loxahatchee, West Palm Beach, Lake Worth, Lake Clark Shores, those canals are making sure that those communities aren't flooded and stay dry. And of course, by doing that, all the chemicals and the things that we spray on our lawns, for example, Loxahatchee has a number of like small animal operations, a lot of like really good nurseries where you can buy plants and things like that. And all of that thing, the roads themselves, the roads have a significant amount of pollution that builds up, and then when it rains, it ends up in our canals. And in the case of the M Canal, it's really significant, Grassy Waters, because right now we, of course, had quite a bit of rain with the last two hurricanes. So right now, Lake Okeechobee is at about 16 feet, which is a little bit too high where we're at. And similarly, throughout the watershed, we have a good amount of water. And this is what it has. This is what we want. This is what we want Grassy Waters to look like, because as that water comes in from the M Canal, what it's supposed to do is that water then disperses into Grassy Waters, and these plants like the lily pads and the grasses and the pond cypress, all these plants that you see here, they work together and they clean that water just like an STA would. It's a very natural process. It's doing what it's supposed to do. It cleans the water and then sends it downstream. Where we run into problems, with the pollution and whatnot, are the years like last year, where right now it's November. It's the first month of our dry season, right? We get this nice cooler weather. It's supposed to not rain as much. Those predictions are getting a little bit more wilder and tougher to do as climate warming and changes happen. But what happens sometimes, like last year over the summer, which was supposed to be our wet time of year, it was actually very dry. And parts of Grassy Waters, I was out here and I remember I was blown away because it looked like a mud pit. It looked like we could walk across Grassy Waters, which is not usual. That's during a drought year. That's not something we generally want. And then it kind of worked together where Grassy Waters was low and there wasn't water for it to disperse. And then a really significant cyanobacteria bloom was sent down those canals, not sent south, sent down to C51. Some of it went up the M Canal. And when it got to Grassy Waters, all that water that was covered with cyanobacteria was stuck in that canal that's down there. It didn't get a chance to disperse itself out into these plants. So it cut straight across Grassy Waters. And then right after Grassy Waters, there's a short little canal run. It goes to Lake Mangonia, which then eventually leads into Clear Lake in West Palm Beach. And that is where the city of West Palm Beach water plant is located at. And they actually derive their drinking water from Clear Lake. So that cyanobacteria was able to, it wasn't sent south into the STAs because the STAs were being worked on and they couldn't send water south. And then it made its way down to M Canal, and it wasn't able to go into Grassy Waters because the water was too low. So it went through that canal into Lake Mangonia, into Clear Lake, where the water plant draws its water source from a surface water source. And that was why, if you live in West Palm and Palm Beach or South Palm Beach, upwards of, I think, something like 160,000 water utility customers didn't have clean drinking water for the better part of a week. And that's because that cyanobacteria really was able to kind of skip a lot of these steps that were to clean the water, and it went straight into the drinking water source. So of course, right now West Palm Beach is making trying to make headway into moving away from deriving their drinking water from a surface water source. They're trying to build, they're working on designing and building a reverse osmosis plant. They need to get the permits for drilling wells so that they can get their water from the aquifer and underground. But that's many years in the making. They have a long way to go to get to that point, and unfortunately, right now, their water is coming from the surface, meaning from a lake from that we can see with our own eyes, which in a state like Florida, where the vast majority of our water bodies are severely polluted, it's not the greatest plan to try and get people clean drinking water. So it's really important to make sure that areas like Grassy Waters, the STAs, and all of these areas where we have natural wetlands, where we have a good balance of plants like the lily pads and the pond cypress, and then down by the estuary where Alex was at with the red mangroves and the seed grasses and all these things, like I mentioned at Lake Okeechobee, that salve, right, that subaquatic vegetation, all of these plants that are in the water, just like the sugarcane fields and just like our lawns, they love uh, fertilizer, right? Phosphorus and nitrogen. Those are the predominant pollutants in our watershed. So the more that we have of these plants, of the natural plants in our ecosystem, the more they can pull all that nutrient pollution out of our waters and help us to maintain a better balance so that the Lake Worth Lagoon can have cleaner water and better for its habitat. And just like we talked earlier before, highlighting how the watershed has that really extreme input ratio of 42 to 1, all that means is that as we move downstream, and the more that we input pollution from farmers, from our yards, from septic tanks, sewer, all of that stuff is contributing into the canals, into the waterways, and the closer that we get to Lake Worth Lagoon, it's just that much more concentrated and flowing into a smaller water body. So it gets really impacted. Really good analogy. If any of you have taken care of aquariums, you know that the smaller the aquarium, the more difficult it is to maintain and to keep track, because a little change in that water can be detrimental to the fish or whatever you're keeping in the aquarium. It's similar in our watershed. It's just many millions of times larger and a much larger scale, but it's a very similar basic concept. The more balance we have between where we live as humans, hopefully making better decisions so that we're not polluting, so we're not putting as much chemicals in our water, balanced with the green areas, the natural areas, our community gardens, all these things that are meant to make up for all of that lost ground of where our houses and our development is. So once again, we're at Grassy Waters. This is such a beautiful preserve. Highly recommend visiting out here. There's a nice little boardwalk. It's a short walk. They have a nice little visitor center on the dock, and you can check their schedule. They have something, at least one thing a week, whether it's like a night hike or a guided canoe, or one of my favorite things that they do is they do a walk through cypress forest. So you get to get wet and just walk in, these beautiful cypress trees, and you really get to see what it's about. So definitely check their schedule. Definitely come out and visit, and appreciate that we have such a beautiful and important place right in our own backyard and in our watershed. That's it.
Yeah. Till next time, till our next
Yeah.
outing.
Yeah, so we'll probably do one more stop. We'll bring us closer to the estuary and to the beach, and kind of that's the last stop of the water. So that should be our last stop of this virtual tour.